Kind of a fun one now. Who's your daddy? What do you think we're talking about when it comes to that category? Paternity suits. Don't you love them? Paternity suits can be, I won't say fun, but they're very interesting. And they take all sorts of strange twists and turns. And I'm going to start with one of the more famous cases, and that is of, who's that? Thomas Jefferson. Any idea why we have old TJ up on the board today? Sally Hemings, that's exactly right. Sally Hemings, from a drawing of some descriptions that were made of her, was one of Thomas Jefferson's slaves. Thomas Jefferson, I think, succumbed to the pressures and the temptations that a lot of people did back in those days, and I am by no means saying it's anything proper. You know, improper conduct is improper conduct no matter if it occurred 200 years ago or occurs today. When he went to Paris as the ambassador of the new administration, that is, it was before Washington when he became Secretary of State, but during that interim time between the Revolution and the Constitution from 1781 through 1787, and a few years of those in between, TJ went to Paris as the ambassador to Paris. He, of course, took his children, and he took Sally with him. Sally was going to be taking care of the children. As it turns out, she was taking care of Tom, too. And I got to stop doing this. Somebody's going to throw me off the boat if I don't do that. Sally was 16 at the time. TJ was 49. 46 or 49, one of the two. He was in his upper 40s anyway. To me, a young person, but to most characteristics, or most people's thinking it probably wasn't back then. In any event, she gets pregnant. They come back home. She delivers the baby. And there is pretty good evidence, even at that time, that it was Thomas Jefferson's child. She goes on to have 2 more children, allegedly with Tom. But in the case of the election of 1796, it was already a campaign issue. That's when Jefferson ran against John Adams and lost. It was an issue in 1800 when Thomas Jefferson ran and won, as well as 1804. It followed him for the rest of his life. And he denied paternity. And it wasn't until recently that new DNA testing was able to trace back through generations of who the father of a person might be. And several of Sally Hemings' direct descendants gave DNA, so did several of Thomas Jefferson's direct descendants, and the matches, again, using that word cautiously, showed that Thomas Jefferson was in fact the father of at least 3 of Sally Hemings' children. Now, had that occurred in today's world, what would that be called? That is, the relationship between Thomas Jefferson and Sally Hemings. Yeah, I think mistress is a good word. It's not one that I use very often, but rape. There's no question about it being rape. Could be statutory rape, but that likely wouldn't apply because of her age and the age of the offender. Statutory rape typically is when you have somebody 16 with a father who's 19 or 20, not a dirty old man who's 46 years old. Well, in any event, it's conclusive that he fathered 3 of her children. It also had kind of an interesting side twist, which had always been the rumor as well. It turned out that Sally Hemings was the half-sister of Thomas Jefferson's wife, Martha, meaning that her mother and Thomas Jefferson's father-in-law also had a fling or 2, and she was the result of that fling. And when Thomas Jefferson married Martha Jefferson, Sally and the other relatives became his property upon a dowry that was submitted in furtherance of the marriage in that case. Interesting concept, dowry. Do they use that anymore in any of the countries that you're familiar with? And if you don't give enough dowry, what happens? You get a lot of problems. Now, I don't think it's practiced that widely anymore, but it still has a problem if not enough dowry is received. Other countries have that. In our case, did I get a dowry, dear, or did I give you something? I can't remember. I don't think there was anything exchanged. We got married back in 1973 while we were still students together at Ohio State. And if I'm offending any Michigan fans, please forgive me. I'm sorry. I knew it. There's some Michigan fans here. No offense to that, but we were still attending Ohio State and graduated from there. The dowry, I think I brought into the marriage a 1971 Vega, Chevrolet Vega. You laugh. You know what our next car was? A Volare. And we got them both out of Consumer Reports, Best Buy. We just had a Volkswagen Passat. I'm digressing, but I need to have to say that we also were not as pleased with as we should have been. So I don't read Consumer Reports anymore before I buy a car. Any event, I brought the Vega in, my clothing. Christy actually had a bank account, which I don't think I had at the time. And it was, that type of thing. I was working at a gas station as a part-time attendant at the pumps at the time we got married. And, I think that her father was told, well, he's a nice guy and he's in oil. Didn't reveal was working at a gas station, but that seemed to work anyway.